Hello guys, how are you?
I'm Hardeep Singh. Welcome back to your own YouTube channel. IELTS updates and recent exams. For more updates related to recent IELTS exam writing test topics, listening, reading, practice test, and speaking, you got guesswork. Please guys participate in everyday listening and reading practice test to achieve your desired band score in your actual IELTS exam. Please hit the like and subscribe button. Press the bell icon for the upcoming notifications. Don't forget like, subscribe and share my YouTube channel and my Facebook page, IELTS updates and recent exams.
Part 1.
You will hear a talk between a student and an accommodation officer. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 10. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 10.
Hello, how may I help you?
Hello, my name is Martina Bila. I made an appointment to see you at 10 o'clock. I'm a little early. Is that okay?
No problem. We're not very busy at the moment. You said on the phone that you weren't happy with your accommodation and were thinking of changing.
That's right.
May I ask what the problem is exactly?
To be honest, there's more than one problem. The main problem is that the accommodation is further than I imagined from the university.
I see. And the other problem or problems?
The other problem is that the landlady is quite a heavy smoker. I'm a non-smoker and I'm afraid that I find it quite unpleasant.
I'm sorry about that. Weren't you given the option of accommodation with smokers or non-smokers?
I'm afraid that's really my fault. I don't mind light smokers, but I didn't get my accommodation organised very much in advance, so most of the accommodation had gone by the time I applied. However, a friend told me that there is sometimes accommodation, accommodation becomes available mid-term because some people leave the university or change their place, the place where they live, so I thought maybe...
I see. Yes, it is important to arrange accommodation well in advance, though it isn't always possible. However, your friend was correct. We do get some accommodation available mid-term. Just give me a minute to find your details on the computer.
Yes, of course.
Now, your current address is 43 Parkway Drive, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes, that's a fair way away. The bus connection isn't too good either, is it? I think that it would be better to focus on that as the reason for moving, rather than the smoking issue. However, I will change the information in the computer to say that this accommodation is only suitable for smokers or people who don't mind heavy smokers. That way we can avoid similar problems in the future.
That sounds like a good idea.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you will have some time to look at questions
Now, the good news is that there is plenty of accommodation available nearer the university. The bad news is that it is more expensive.
That's okay. I expected that. Is there any catered or self-catering university accommodation available? That would be ideal.
I thought you might be interested in that. The day after you phoned, a place became available. It's catered, so it's the most expensive type of accommodation, but it's yours if you want it.
There's no self-catering accommodation available?
Not at the moment. Something could become available at any time, but then again, you might have to wait weeks.
I understand. Can I just check the cost?
It's £37.50 per week. You also have to pay £23.15 during the Christmas and Easter holidays, regardless of whether you are there or not. That sum doesn't include meals during those periods.
But summer holidays are not included.
That's right. Students are permitted to stay in university accommodation during holidays, but they usually have to move to a different flat.
I see. And do I pay monthly?
Yes, but don't worry if you're a few days late. It happens quite often, and we don't mind too much.
Can I see a picture of the accommodation?
Sure. It looks like this. You can see that there is a single bedroom for each student and a common living room and bathroom. There are no cooking facilities, but many students buy a microwave.
Can you tell me anything about the people I'd be living with?
There are 2 girls there. One is British and one is Indian. They are studying law and marketing, respectively. They're the same age as you, 20, and they're not smokers.
That sounds perfect. If I don't give my landlady a month's notice, she gets to keep the deposit, doesn't she?
That's normally stated in the rental agreement, yes. I'd like to be able to keep this university accommodation available, but I'm afraid I can't. If someone else wants it and takes it...
I understand. I'll take it. Can I move in on the first day of next month?
What day is today? 22nd. Yes, that should be fine. Give me a minute to print out the standard rental agreement.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
You'll hear a lecture. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 20. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 20.
Welcome, everybody. Are you all sitting comfortably? My name is David Price, and this is our first meeting in a series of presentations called Countdown to Departure. I know that you have just arrived here for your year-long course prior to going abroad, but it's certainly worth taking the time to consider, to think about events that will take place a year or almost a year from now. I have handed out this useful guide to planning your time abroad. Please follow the suggested timetable closely. It is vital that you get each thing done on time. If you can get things done earlier, then we suggest in the guide, that's great. But certainly don't leave them later than we recommend. If you do not get these things done on time, it could jeopardize your study abroad, or at least delay it by a year. Now, we are currently 1 year from departure, so you should start applying for postgraduate programs and scholarships immediately, if you haven't already. Consult your tutors for further advice on these points. You should also calculate a rough estimate of your study and living expenses and consider how to pay for them. We'll be looking at that in more detail during the next meeting. You should start arranging accommodation abroad as soon as you have accepted a place on a course. Arranging accommodation can be a rather bureaucratic procedure and can take a while. At the same time, ask the university about your options for paying your fees. The next point on your timetable is 6 months before you leave. At that point, you need to check your passport, and if you are going to need a new one, deal with that immediately. Remember that your passport might need to be valid for the whole of the period you intend to be abroad, but that you can often renew your passport at your embassy in the country where you are studying. In any case, your passport needs to be valid for at least 6 months after you enter the country where you intend to study. It might seem unnecessary to get your passport in order so early before you go, but remember that you have to get your visa as well. You should do that around 6 months before leaving too. Bear in mind one final simple point. Make sure that your passport has a few empty pages left for visas and stamps. Two or 3 months before departure, you should ask your bank about the options for transferring money to the country you'll be studying in and setting up a bank account there. You should also start looking at booking your flight to the country you'll be studying in order to get the best rates. The cost of flights varies considerably from carrier to carrier, and even between different travel agencies, and depend a lot upon the time of year you are flying. Booking in advance can save you a considerable sum of money. When you book your flight, you should check with the airline or travel agent to find out what your baggage allowance is. At the same time, look into booking your other travel within the country you're going to from the airport where you will arrive. Don't forget to buy travel insurance when you book any flights. Finally, still 2 or 3 months before departure, make sure that you have an unconditional letter of acceptance from the university you're going to attend. This is vital, as it facilitates entry clearance if into the country. Next, about 1 month before leaving, find out whether you will be entitled to receive free health treatment in the country you're going to, and find out how much you will have to pay if not. Look into arranging health insurance if necessary. Also, buy currency and traveller's checks to cover your first few weeks in the country. Watch the exchange rates and pick a good time, but do not leave it too late. If you are buying traveller's checks or a large amount of money of currency, your bank may need a while to arrange this. Another thing to do is find out what you can take into the country and what items are prohibited. Finally, find out whether your home insurance policy will cover your belongings while they are abroad. If not, arrange suitable insurance or look into the possibility of arranging a policy in the foreign country. The last point on this timetable is 2 weeks before you leave. At this time, you need to do 2 things. One is to ask your doctor to write a letter explaining any prescription medicines, what they are, and why you are taking them. The second is to request a reference letter from your bank in your own country, as this will help you to open a bank account abroad. Now, let's take a closer look at.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
You will hear a conversation. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 30. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 30. Welcome back to the new term, Martin and Amanda. I hope you've had a good break and that you're looking forward to writing your dissertations. In this tutorial, I'd like to give you the opportunity to ask questions on writing the dissertation, such as requirements, dates, and who to see when you need help. I know that it's all available on the department website, but sometimes students just like to check or confirm information, or sometimes they need a little more detail. So, is there anything you'd like to ask?
Is there a fixed hand-in date yet? On the website it said that one hadn't been decided on yet.
I'm glad you asked that question. I just heard this morning that the deadline has been decided and it is the 28th of May. That's a week later than we had originally planned.
What about the word limit? The website gave a very broad range. What was it, Martin? 10,000 to 20,000 words?
I believe so, Amanda.
Well, I believe that was a typing error. It should be 10 to 12,000 words, but feel free to write a little more if you need to. However, make sure that your dissertation is at least 10,000 words long, not including the contents, references, and bibliography.
Right, thank you. And we can choose any topics we like, can't we?
Any from year 3. And do remember to get your topic approved by your personal tutor. Oh, that's me, isn't it? Before you start writing, I'd hate to have to tell you your topic was unacceptable after you'd spent a lot of time on it.
What would you like us to show you initially, apart from the title?
Well, I'd like to see a basic bibliography first, along with an outline of your dissertation. You should get that done by the end of January. This month, in other words.
According to the website, the research should take 8 to 10 weeks. So that takes us from, well, until mid-April, basically.
Yes, you should have the research pretty much done by the time you return from the Easter break.
It seems like a reasonable amount of time, but I bet it disappears fast.
It certainly does. You'll probably find that you need to do some extra research during the second half of April. Ideally, you'd be writing then, but very few students get all the information they need, and the personal tutors almost always need to make some further suggestions. That's why it's really important to get the bulk of your research done by mid-April.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions.
I see. If we get into trouble, or can see that we're going to get into trouble with our research, we should obviously contact you ASAP.
Absolutely.
Do you think that we should look at what other students have done in the past, in order to get a better idea of what to do and what to write?
It can be helpful, but what often happens is that students rely too much on what they read. So I would only use other previous students' work as a reference.
Got it.
I know that we have the research guide to help us, but are there any other books or sources that you would recommend? I mean, to help us with planning a dissertation and the organisation and so on.
Yes, I wanted to ask you that too.
There are several available from the library. I wouldn't bother buying any. My personal favourite is Dissertations in You by Roger Klein. Another good one is Mastering Your Dissertation by Helen Blondell. There's a book about research techniques. What's it called? It's something simple like Research Techniques for Dissertations. The author is Helen Trailforth. Oh, I know. It's called Dissertation Research Techniques. Very good book. There's more than one copy of each of those in the library. One is for reference only, and you know about the recall system if a book is being borrowed by someone else and you want it, don't you?
Yes.
Good, very good. Anything else?
Well, now that you've mentioned research techniques, I've got a question. Questionnaires. A good idea, Professor.
The general consensus is that they're not very helpful, though some prominent researchers beg to differ. Clear them with me first if you decide to go ahead and use them. You see, you need to be very careful about the questions that you ask and order of the questions. Questionnaires very often lead people towards giving certain answers rather than getting at their true feelings and opinions.
Martin, anything else?
No, I'm happy. Thank you, Professor.
Yes, thank you so much. My pleasure.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
You will hear a monologue. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Have you ever wondered where your recyclables end up after they get picked up from the curb? After you've left them at a recycling drop-off centre, or when your hauler has come to empty your recycling dumpster? Well, this presentation will tell you. The story begins when a resident places their materials out for recycling in a special bin, brings their recyclables to one of the recycling drop-off centres, or when a business puts their used materials in their recycling dumpster. It is very important that residents and employees properly prepare their recyclables for collection. Improper preparation of materials, for example not removing container lids or including the wrong type of material, causes contamination. Although some contamination is to be expected and is removed during the sorting process at the processing facility, processors may not accept materials that are heavily contaminated, and these will be disposed of. After materials are put out for recycling, the recycling truck comes to pick them up. Recyclables brought to the drop-off centres should be placed in the appropriate bins. The large containers are emptied periodically or whenever they are full. Businesses and multi-family residences collect on the days decided by the property manager. The trucks that collect recyclables from the curb and drop-off centres then drive the materials to a material recovery facility, or MRF. When the trucks arrive at the MRF, they are first weighed at the station to determine the weight of materials delivered to the facility. Next, the trucks proceed to the tipping floor, where they dump their materials. Items are dumped in specific areas to facilitate the sorting process. After the different materials are dumped on the tipping floor at the MRF, they are fed onto different conveyor belts according to the type of material. The materials then proceed up the different conveyor belts and are subject to both manual and automatic sorting. Individuals manually remove any large objects such as a lawn chair or garbage can, along with any contaminants. After the initial manual sort, the materials pass by a magnet that captures the metal cans, and then through an air sorter to separate the remaining materials. Once the materials are sorted, they are compressed into bales that are shipped to processors, who will then use these materials to create new products. Plastics can be recycled into items such as clothing, lumber, park benches and playground equipment. Metal and glass containers are often recycled into new containers, and paper is recycled into new paper products, such as copy paper, toilet paper, napkins and newspaper. Remember to close the recycling loop. Buy recycled both at home and at work, as this is the only way that recycling truly succeeds. Find out more about buying recycled products. Remember, if you're not buying recycled, you're not really recycling. So, how are we doing? Let's take a brief look at our recycling rate information. All municipalities are required to maintain a minimum recycling rate of 25% of the total municipal solid waste generated annually. We are required to annually report on recycling activities and file a report with the Department of Environmental Quality, or DEQ. These reports are due to the DEQ on April 30th of each year for the preceding calendar year. Based on information received to date, last year we reported a recycling rate of 33.9%, 2.8% higher than the previous year. Paper recycling was up 36%, as was the recycling of bottles and cans. Our target is a recycling rate of over 50% by 2014.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
So guys, don't forget like, subscribe and share my YouTube channel and my Facebook page, IELTS updates and recent exams. For more updates related to recent IELTS exam writing test topics, listening, reading, practice test and speaking, you get guesswork. Please guys, participate in everyday new IELTS listening and reading practice tests to achieve your desired band score in your actual IELTS exam. For more IELTS material, visit my official website www.ieltsupdatesandrecentexams.com. The link is given below in the description. If you need PDF files of latest IELTS material, then please join my Telegram channel. So guys, please write your score below the comment section. Again, thanks for listening. God bless you all guys. Stay tuned, stay safe.